We will start the recording then here at 10 a.m. I'd like to welcome everybody, advise everybody that board members, staff, and guests are advised that Authority Board meetings are being video audio recorded and will be posted to the Authority's Facebook website along with the official written minutes. As such, comments and opinions expressed may be published, and any comments expressed by individual board members, guests, and the general public are their own and do not represent opinions or comments of the full Authority and the Board of Directors. The recorded video of the full Authority meetings is not considered the official record of the meeting. The official record of the Authority meeting shall consist solely of the minutes approved by the Board of Directors. If you haven't at this point, if you could mute all of your mics, and then you'll need to unmute before speaking. The chair will be asking for opposition only on business items. If you oppose, please raise your hand until the chair acknowledges you and use the chat function. Our preference is that you physically raise your hand to communicate where possible. Please leave your hand raised until you are acknowledged. If you do not have access, and I think everybody's got access to a video camera, so I don't need to worry about that. When speaking, you might want to give us your name so that we're not looking around the entire screen. But if you have any technical difficulties at any time, please get a hold of Chris at 519-245-3710, extension 230, and Chris will get back to you ASAP. Mr. Chair, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Brian. Ashley, could you please do a roll call, please?
Certainly. John Brennan.
Here.
Al Broad.
Present.
Pat Brown.
Here.
Andy Brucewicks. I know he's here, but on mute. You're on mute, Andy.
Present.
Terry Burrell.
Present.
Joe Foss.
Present.
Larry Gordon.
Present.
Aaron Hall.
Here.
Frank Kenneth.
Here.
Brad Loosely.
Present.
Betty Ann McKinnon.
Here.
Kevin Marriott.
I'm present.
Nettie McEwen.
Present.
Mark McGill.
Here.
Dan McMillan.
Present.
Steve Miller.
Present.
Frank Nemchek.
Here.
Lori Scott.
Present.
Mike Stark will be joining us a little bit late, as I mentioned, and Jerry Westgate.
Here.
Perfect, thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. Apparently we have a quorum, so I guess we're all set. This time I'd like to recognize and congratulate Sharon Nethercott, Conservation Education Coordinator, and Melissa Levi, Conservation Education Conservation Partnership Technician, for being recipients of the 2020 Watershed Interpreters Network Innovation Award for developing virtual field trips at Lawrence C. Henderson Conservation Area in response to sudden school closures. The success of the field trips exceeded all expectations. Over 20,000 students, teachers, families accessed the field trips across Canada and Ontario. Thank you, Sharon and Melissa, for your dedication, innovation, and commitment to keeping students connected to nature through these unprecedented times. So congratulations to both of you. It's quite an honor, and that virtual field trips have gone far and wide, and I think we've really put a good name to the St. Clair Conservation Authority by your efforts. So we thank you for that. Also at this time, I'd like to recognize that Sharon Nethercott will be retiring. We thank her for her service and wish her well in her retirement. And we also congratulate Melissa Levi for assuming the position of Conservation Education Coordinator, and we know that you'll do great in your new role. So congratulations to both of you. I also would like to congratulate Kevin Marriott on being elected the warden of Lambton County. This is the first time in 17 years that I've been on the board that we've had a warden, and we look forward to your being on our board and representing Lambton County as their warden on our board. So congratulations, Kevin, and we wish you well in your term.
Thank you, Joe.
All right. Is there any comments you'd like to make, Kevin? Sorry to catch you off guard.
I don't think so, Joe. I don't think there's anything important at this point, so I haven't got any words of wisdom for you. Sorry, I'm a little deprived of sleep yet.
Okay. And I shouldn't, I apologize for catching you off guard anyway. So, but anyway, we are proud of you being in that position, and we look forward to working well with you. So thank you. At this time, we'll go to the agenda, that the board of directors adopt the agenda for the meeting as presented. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please?
I'll move.
Okay, Steve Miller and Larry Gordon. Is there any, all in favor or any opposed? Sorry. Carried. It is requested that each director declare a conflict of interest at the appropriate time on any item within this agenda, in that the director may have a pecuniary interest. Item 4.1, can I have a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the Board of Directors meeting held November 12th, 2020 be approved as distributed? Terry Burrell and Frank Kennis. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Item 5.1, that the Board of Directors acknowledges the General Manager's report dated December the 3rd, 2020, and further approves the correspondence regarding Bill 229 to be signed by the Chair. Is there any questions? Go ahead, Brad.
Thank you, Chairman Joe. Just, I mean, the letter is well written, but I don't agree with that letter at this time. I think it's probably too late, and I think these changes have been coming for some time, so I will not support that letter. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Frank Kennis.
I guess maybe when we're on this topic, just I think I've heard that the legislation has been passed. Maybe we get an update on that.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Are we, Brian, just a question, can we do that later on, or I guess it's part of the general, yeah, go ahead, sorry.
Yep. No, the legislation has passed. It has received royal assent. Of course, there will be regulations that are accompanying these legislative changes. What I've been told is that those are already basically completely crafted. I think the only changes they'll be making would be changes that result from the alterations that were made in standing committee. So I think those will have to be pulled out. So we might be with the Christmas break into late January, early February before we see regulations. But I do expect to see those in fairly short order.
Okay. Okay. Is there any other questions? Brad?
Yeah,
You're
Mr.
muted.
Chair, just to clarify that, but legislation, it has been passed, and they won't meet again now until February. Thank you.
Okay, the motion's on the floor. Is there any other questions? Any opposed? Brad? Seeing Brad and Kevin, seeing no others. Motion's carried. Item 6.1, can I have a mover and a seconder that the board of directors acknowledge the minutes of the Conservation Ontario Council meeting held remotely on September the 28th, 2020. Mover, please. Pat and John. Questions? Seeing none, motion's carried. Okay, that a mover and a seconder that the board of directors approves the consent agenda endorsing the recommendations accompanying item 7.1A to 7.1T. Is there any items that anybody wants pulled in the consent agenda? Go ahead, Frank.
A question on 7.1Q.
Okay. Go ahead.
It's showing that it's the payroll schedule there, and for payroll 24, it shows a payroll of 674,000, which seems really high compared to what the regular payrolls are. And I just wondered if that was an error or, yeah.
Okay. Tracy, is she on?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Yes, that is an error. I didn't catch it till this morning. I'll have that corrected. It's usually about 73,000 about this time. I don't have the exact number. I could get it if you want it right now.
No, that's fine. I mean, yeah, as long as it's not 674,000, I'm okay.
No, I wouldn't be approving those types of, the bank would be calling me.
Okay, thanks, Frank. That's it for you?
Yes, it is. Yep.
Brad, go ahead. Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to, just more of a comment on 7L, and that's the enclosed drains. And I understand, and it's quite detailed, but I think my concern is creating work for ourselves if it's already covered on the Drainage Act. And are we, at a time when we're trying to sort out our mandate, do we want to take on this extra work? The reason I say that, Mr. Chair, is under Section 28, the opinion of the minister states should require permission. It doesn't say shall require. Section 28(1), the authority says may make regulations, not shall make regulations. I mean, I agree with the good communications, but I'm just concerned, are we creating some extra work we don't really need to do? And that's just my feeling, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. Kevin, you had a comment? Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Kevin.
Yeah, just to clarify, they all are 7.1 except until I get to M, it says 6.1M. I think that must be a typo, but just to clarify on silt fencing, does this report say that, is there a change to the silt fencing? Like, we had an issue with silt fencing being a requirement where it really did not need to be. And I'm just trying to clarify from staff if this report is confirming something different than what was in the past, or is this just for clarification, please?
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The I'll try and answer both questions here. The report basically says that under our commenting, we look at every kind of tool that we can that's going to protect from erosion, control sedimentation, etc. The silt fence is one of those tools that can be used. I think we had a very particular application in the one that Kevin is worried about, and I don't see that being something that happens very often, and I can't speak to whether it was the only alternative maybe in the instance that we're talking about, because it's not a cheap alternative, and certainly we want to work with the drainage superintendents to make sure we're getting the work done, but doing it in the best way possible. So we'll certainly look closely at any of those that we're having to put a significant cost into like that moving forward. I hope that answers your question, Kevin.
Thanks for that. Yeah, and you're right. The situation you were referring to, Brian, like the cost was, I forget the number, but it was almost like a 50% increase to the overall project, which the cost for doing maintenance on drains is just getting so out of control. You know, for the board to worry about the increase in cost to the budget with the cutbacks, something like this to drain maintenance is even more severe. So I just, you know, I'm worried going forward, like that we have to deal with it especially for the minimal amount of improvement that it makes on heavy clay soil. So I guess I'm just a bit worried going forward where it may pop up again. Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Brian.
To speak to Kevin's question, I don't see it coming up very often in Lambton. I mean, the silt fence normally is where we're into issues of a steeper slope or, you know, site controls, etc. So yes, on the development stuff, but it's not really a tool that we even think about using on the drains very often. A matter of fact, if we need to, we might be looking at more of a natural type solution like straw bales, etc. But yeah, I don't see that being something that you're going to see very often in our requests.
Frank Nepchuk.
Yeah, on this 7L, on page 79, number 6. Are you there, Brian?
Yep.
Okay, if the farmer and the drainage superintendent want to straighten a ditch or put a culvert in the bottom of a gully, and the authority says no, who's got the final say on that? Is it the authority or the drainage superintendent? On number 6. They
do require our permission. So the intent would be to come to, you know, an equitable solution for all, understanding what the objective is. I realizing that with both the Drainage Act and the Conservation Authorities Act being comparable and not having gone to any upper level of court at this point, I don't know that we're specifically going to deal with a violation, but I know that it is something that will end up coming back to the board at some point in time when we get an example of it, Frank.
So at the end of the day, you say the board of directors got the final say?
You are always an appellate a board. So if a decision is made at a staff level, then we can accept an appeal, and that will be brought to the board of directors. The new rules that have come out under Schedule 6 of Bill 229 add a myriad of other appeal opportunities. And to be perfectly honest, I'm going to have to spend a little more time with my dictionary and in the library to be able to lay those out for you, but I'm going to do that in the future so that you'll have a better understanding of all those appeal opportunities.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
Betty Ann, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Chair
Betty Ann?
Joe.
Betty Ann, go ahead.
Yes, through you, Chair Joe, to Brian. It's my understanding, Brian, that your intention is to meet with all the drainage superintendents within the near future to try and resolve some of these issues. Is that correct?
That is absolutely correct.
Hello.
And we're even seeking an opportunity to obtain some funding to not only assist in paying for the consultation, but also potentially to try and draw some dollars in that might even be for demonstration projects where we might be able to work with some of the drainage superintendents that have got more innovative works that they're working on right now.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, I don't see any other hand. Go ahead, Brian.
Just to respond to Brad, so the legislation is written that way. We actually have already put enacted our own reg. So the regulation that we speak to, 171, oh goodness, whatever the number is, and I'd find it if
28.1, 28,
Yes.
I think, or 28.1 or 28, section 28.
Right, but under section 28, we can establish a regulation, and that regulation is the, goodness gracious, 17106. So we have established a regulation, and that's what's laid out in the document. So basically the act allows us to, and that has happened, and that's that approved regulation 17106.
Okay, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Brian. I guess, and I understand that. I guess my concern is the way it's written, where even though you've got something in place, the actual act uses the words like should require, doesn't say shall. Say it's, or says you may do that, you may make regulations, but you don't have to. My concern only is creating additional work or competing with the Drainage Act when we don't need to do that. And that's just my concern, that we're not wasting time or arguing over something on who's going to have the final say. Thank you. And I'm just saying here, we don't have to do that. We've chosen to do that. And I just question, maybe we shouldn't be getting into that as a thought. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Do we have a mover and a seconder for the consent agenda, Ashley? Okay. Go ahead, Larry.
We do not. We do not have
Okay.
a mover.
You're moving that, Larry?
If I might, through you, Mr. Chair, 7.1b, I just liked online here acknowledge the donors in Greg Wilcox's report at A.W. Campbell, the Brook Central School and the Elvinston Optimist Club, and their donations there. They're very welcome. Strathroy Conservation, the Bonduel donation, and Coldstream boardwalk materials coming in from Middlesex Center. These donations are so key and so important, and maybe even more so given what has happened at Queen's Park this week. The involvement and the donations that we're getting to carry on the work that we wish and have to do.
Okay, thanks, Larry. Will you move the consent agenda?
I will.
Okay, seconder. Okay, Kevin Marriott. No,
Sorry,
you have
Joe.
a comment, Kevin?
Yeah, sorry, Joe. I just have a question on all these items under 7. Aren't we doing this a little different than we have in the past, where we're passing a whole bunch at once, where in the past I think we would have dealt with each one separately? Because to do a group passing like this, like some of them might be agreeable to be passed and others aren't. Like, I'm confused here, because as some of the discussion on 7.1L, like I'm still confused on this, because we reversed our drain enclosure, but this seems to put teeth back into it, and then we're being asked to pass it under a group of other items. So I'm just a little bit confused here, if someone could explain that.
Okay, I know that we've been doing this since we started virtual meetings, and apparently there's legislation that allows us to do that, and I think the board approved that. Maybe you can enlighten more on that, Brian?
Absolutely. Excuse me. So the consent agenda concept is basically to lump the reports that simply require acknowledgement, where you're not approving something in particular. And in this case, you're basically just acknowledging the reports. So we've done this to expedite, etc. Understand that a lot of times in the past we've gone through, and in a lot of these that don't really require a motion specifically. So we certainly have no issue drawing any of them out, or in maybe Ashley and I need to have a little more stringent controls as to which ones we put in here, but that's maybe the essence of what we're looking to do with the use of the consent agenda.
Brad, go ahead.
Thank you for that, Brian and Chairman Joe. I think, yeah, the intent would be to pull out the ones you have concerns for, but I don't have any problem going through these one at a time, because I think we can do that pretty quickly if you wanted. But I also want to make it clear, once we acknowledge it, that is a sense of approval. So if we approve all these things, we're actually saying, yeah, we acknowledge. That's almost, to me, the same as approving them. Thank you.
Okay, Frank Kennis, go ahead.
Just to comment, my understanding of consent agendas is that any director can request that an item be pulled out, and then we vote on that individual item separately from the remaining items of the consent agenda. So if there's items that we want pulled out, I think we should request that and vote on them separately. So.
Yeah, and that's correct. Yeah, Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with that. That's the intent. We should pull them out, discuss and vote on the ones we want separately. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
So seeing that clarification, then Chair Joe, could we please pull out item L, since we had some vigorous discussion with that?
Okay, that's no problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Can I have a mover and a seconder then that the Board of Directors acknowledges the report dated November the 23rd, 2020 on the Municipal Enclosed Drains Conservation Authority Act? Terry Burrell and Aaron Hall. Okay, questions? Okay, is there any opposed? Kevin Marriott, is there any others?
Mr. Chair, is it clear? Are we dealing with 7.1.1 separately then?
7.1L is what yeah.
We're going to do that after. We're approving everything with the exception of 7L.
Well, what I was doing, I guess, was approving 7L, and then once we get the ones out of the way, then we would approve the rest of them.
All right. So I'd like to ask for a recorded vote then on 7L, please.
Okay. Go ahead, Ashley.
One moment. For or against? John Brennan?
For.
Al Broad?
Against.
Pat Brown?
Can I ask a question just to clarify? I see this report as information, and we're not actually rescinding the motion to what we rescinded on the enclosed drains. Is that Chairman Joe? Anybody care to answer that?
Joe appears to be
frozen. I think Joe's having some connection issues.
I'm frozen. Yeah. There we go. Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha.
Okay. Can you address that, Brian?
Yes, that it is very much for information from our perspective, Pat, that this is simply to answer, not only where things are at now, and with what we maybe it's not even well enough laid out as to what we could do moving forward, but I certainly think that level of that communication with the drainage superintendent is going to be a huge factor in what we're dealing with moving forward. But it is very much acknowledging what's on the landscape right now.
Okay.
So
I approve.
Go ahead, Lori. Did you have a comment?
Go ahead, Sis.
I do. If we're going to do a motion where we pull something out and then we're just going to vote on it, why are we pulling it out? Like, I thought we would be pulling something out to have discussion after. To my way of thinking, with that consent items, we should be doing everything but the one that we're pulling out. And then we should have that one separate so that we can do discussion on it. This isn't making sense to me. So I don't think we should have a motion going forward on the consent item we've pulled. I believe we should do the other consent items first and then go on to this one that we pulled, because it seems to me we're just voting it just like we were doing A to the end, and not having the discussion that appears to be required to do this L. So if we're not going to have a discussion on L, then I see no need to pull it out of the consent agenda in the first place.
I believe I asked if there was any comments or questions on that item, and I didn't see any more hands. That's why I put it to a vote. But I don't think I stifled anybody from making comment. So anyway, whatever your wishes are, I guess. But I feel that we can move all the ones that aren't polled. So can I have a list then of the ones that you want polled? Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Lori. I think, why don't we approve everything now except for the ones that we pull?
Okay.
So we could get them out of the way, Mr. Chair, and then that's done, and then discuss any items that any other members want to discuss separately. Let's approve all the others, and then we'll just say except for 7L and get a motion to get them out of the way.
Okay, is 7L the only one that wants to be polled, or is there others?
Oh, shoot.
Brad, go ahead.
Just a question, Mr. Chair, on 7LN. Are we replacing the Sharon that's being retired then? Did we replace that position or not?
Yes, in the report, it indicates that Melissa Levi is going to take that position. And I think they have one hired, do they not, to take Melissa's spot, Brian? Can you
Yes, we do.
that? Yeah.
I guess my question, Mr. Chair, is that a good thing to do at this time when everything's an issue regarding mandates? Should we be replacing that position? It's just a comment. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
None of the funding in support of those staff come from the board of directors, come from the municipalities. It's all donor dollars, all separate funding. So we felt that it was very important to be able to keep moving forward, keep satisfying the requests of our donors and our grantors, and still being able to provide that service to all our education supporters going forward.
Brad, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, thank you, Brian. I have no problem with that. Thank you.
Okay. Just for clarification, we're polling 7.1L and 7.1M. Is that correct?
Oh, I don't know. I think, Mr. Chair, Kevin, did you want to withdraw that 7.1M for further discussion?
Well, that's what that was my original intent, but then, and I agreed with Lori that. Wow. I think Joe's having major internet.
Yeah. I'm getting a message that my internet is sort of messing up here. So anyway, did you have anything else, Kevin? Are you satisfied with 7.1M?
Oh yeah, I didn't have an issue with M, and sorry to create this confusion with L. And I do agree with Lori's idea that we really should, it would be simpler to deal with the ones that are pulled after. So anyway, this is getting confusing, but I'm okay with just.
Okay, that's fine. Is there any others then besides 7.1L?
Yes, I would like 7.1D.
1D, okay. Okay. Okay, is there any others then? Seeing none, then I need a mover and a seconder that we approve the consent agenda except for those two items. Mark, and a seconder, please. Natty, any opposed? That motion's carried. Okay, so we've been discussing 7.1L, so I'll bring it back on the floor. Can I first have a mover and a seconder so that we can proceed with that? Terry, seconder, Frank Nemchek. Okay, I'll open up the floor to discussions on 7.1L. Okay, go ahead, Kevin.
So I guess, as Pat indicated, you know, is this for information? And I respect that. I guess I was just leery because I'm not very clear in how this is written, if this is just information or if it was setting some type of policy going forward. And that's why I was against passing it, just because it's not to be critical of how it's written. I just was leery of there being something in there that gives the drain enclosure too much teeth.
Okay, any other comments? Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that was my concern as well, because I mean, we did rescind that, and it's just a little confusing after we've all agreed that it be rescinded to still read that we're still doing it. That was my concern. And when I read the act, when I say should and may, I'm just, again, at a time when we're trying to not take on things that we don't need to. Why are we complicating this? If we've rescinded it, should we completely stop it? I guess that's my question to Brian, if possible, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Brian.
I think of course, I did a lousy job of explaining this, I guess, when we did indeed rescind the drain enclosure policy. So the policy basically said, here's what it is, here's how we deal with it. It was a communications document more than a regulatory policy. So our reg, as it stands, is exactly what basically is written within this document. You get the concept as to these things are within the purview, and drain enclosures, be they a roadside culvert, be they 500 meters across somebody's farm, those still fall within that regulation. We still are required to provide comments on that. And in our ever more litigious society, we can actually be sued or have a claimant come forward in specific if we are not undertaking our responsibilities under the regulation. So with this, you see that the drain enclosure policy literally didn't have any impact on what we have to do under the regulation. And if we were to look at withdrawing our regulation to take into account what's been addressed under the Act as shall and may, I think we would have an issue unless we're going to take the effort to withdraw and replace it with a different regulation and have that registered. And I'm not really sure that we're in a position to do that at this point, but I can certainly take the board direction and maybe report back to you as to how we would do that.
Okay, is there any other comments, questions? Go ahead, Lori.
I feel that a report would be good. It would then clarify what we've passed or not, or what we've passed in before, and it would clarify this, and we can see them side by side, and then we're able to make a clear and objective vote one way or the other. I feel that this one seems to have some qualities there that are making us maybe unsure of what it's actually saying. So a clarification, Brian, would be wonderful.
Okay, did you want that just sent out to each member later, or do you want to pull the item for a later date? Go ahead, Brian.
Not to speak to whether we deal with 7L, but we can certainly come forward and staff can make a more fulsome presentation. I think that's a better case to make sure that we have discussion and get an understanding of this is what our reg says, this is what we're responsible to do. I think we can provide that, and maybe that would clear up some things.
Okay, Lori, go ahead.
You're muted, Lori.
Lori, you're muted.
Yep, got it. I'd like to defer this until we have a report come forward, please.
Okay, can I have a seconder for that, Brad?
I'll second that. Yep.
Okay, is there any discussion on the deferral? Carrie, go ahead.
This is just a report. We seem like we talk about this every meeting.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why we can't just pass this and go ahead and then let Brian bring forward more information he thinks some members may need. I don't see why we have to delay this. This is just a report.
Any other comments on the deferral? Okay, is there any opposed to the deferral? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion's carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll go to 7.1D. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mike and seconder? Betty Ann? Okay, Mike, go ahead. You got the report.
Yes, I have two questions. The first is based on page 51. It deals with the Brights Grove, Kenwick Street to Helena Phase 2. And it talks about deficiencies still remain. Could I ask Suresh to update us on those deficiencies? And do we have any proposed solutions?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
We had a conversation with COPE last week, and our preference is to make sure that the design is like for like, which is basically trying to get back with a barge and replace those tow stones at approximately 17 locations. We have tried to nudge COPE in that direction, but though they recognize that they have to complete the work, they have not been able to mobilize the equipment. Currently, we are working on a plan B for that area. We are going to forward that design to COPE sometime next week and see if they're able to move ahead with that work.
Okay, thanks, Krish. Go ahead, Mike.
I presume, and I shouldn't, but has there been a holdback on this? I presume they haven't been paid out, obviously.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, we have a 10% to hold back as a part of the contract, and we have not paid amounting to what we think would be the work that if we were to hire another contractor to get similar work. So we have been holding back some funds for that.
Thank you. And on page 52, the Shoreline Projects,
okay.
It calls for a groin-only project to prioritize locations of groins and installation of 2 to 3 groins. My question is, what type of a groin is being anticipated?
Through you, Mr. Chair. the groins are what we have seen in the last 30 years is the groins that are currently there. The T-shaped groins has been working tremendously well. So we are still of the opinion that we can implement some of those T-shaped groins. So that's the gold standard we're aiming for.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there any other questions on this item, please? Seeing none. Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion's carried. Thank you. Okay. We're going to 8.1. Brian, did you want to do a verbal summary on the responses to the budget?
I mean, I think we should bring Tracy in on that.
Okay.
I have not received, through you, Mr. Chair, I've not received any verbal responses in regards to the budget being sent to the municipalities. We've received some questions back. We've had some discussions. We created some additional reporting to clarify some of the information provided in the numbers to all municipalities, and I have not received any verbal or email comments back in regards to the budget.
Okay.
Joe, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
We did receive correspondence from Don Euphemia concerned over identifying that there were some concerns regarding the budget, but maybe Mr. Rod can add more teeth to that. But at this point, that was it was just identified that they were concerned.
Okay.
Yeah, the only concern they had was the rest of council was they wanted to keep it at the inflation, the increase in the budget. That's what it was. Yeah.
All right. Any other comments, Brad? Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, that's on our agenda for Monday night. So there will be a decision made Monday night that will be sent to the Conservation Authority. I believe there'll also be a bit of a concern as well, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Any other comments? Go ahead, Mike.
I believe on behalf of, well, I can't speak on behalf of the city of Sarnia, but as a result of the discussions at the city of Sarnia, there is, as I understand it, the budget is being returned for reevaluation, and there was a specific reference to the request for special levy as it relates to Highland Glen. Those considerations are forthcoming, or I guess the response from the St. Clair Conservation is what is expected in anticipation of those requests. And that, in fact, may be what the staff member was referring to.
Okay. Is there any other comments or questions? Okay, I need a mover and a seconder that the Board of Directors acknowledges the verbal summary of comments received to date on the 2021 budget draft. Terry, seconder, Andy Bruzowicz. Is there anybody opposed? Motion's carried. Okay, I need a mover and a seconder that the Board of Directors approves the 2021 budget of $9,739,780 with a non-matching general levy of $1,018,576 with all member municipalities deemed as benefiting, and further that the levy be apportioned using the modified current value assessment of each municipality with the authority's area of jurisdiction. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Dan, seconded by Terry. Comments, please. Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it relates probably to 8.2 and 8.2 and 8.3. I want to thank Brian and the staff for sending out the breakdown on the budget, basically. But what I did, just to keep it simple so it wasn't confusing, I just took the current operating expense year to year. And my concern is, again, we're, for the town of Petrolia, without the additional work or special work, it's 6.7%. And I would really like that to try and get down closer to inflation. So that's my concern on both of those motions, Mr. Chair.
I don't see any hands. So the motion
Joe,
carried.
I lost you for a bit. Can you repeat that? You were kind of frozen on my screen.
Go ahead, Brian.
I wanted to. Sorry, Joe, you're pretty broken up to us.
Big ship went by.
Okay. How's that? Yeah, but there is no ship going by right now. There, how's that? Okay, sorry.
Goodness.
Sorry about that. I don't know what I'm doing here. Brad, to clarify, I'm putting the motion to the floor to accept the 2021 budget. Okay. And I have no hands. Brian, go ahead.
I know there's maybe a couple of others, but I certainly wanted to understand without question the concern brought forward by Brad. The had an opportunity to present the budget to Adelaide Metcalfe Council on Monday night, and Council was, I think, even a little bit surprised when I provided them with a comparison for their two conservation authorities. The Asable Bayfield has the northern 30, let's say 1/3 of Adelaide Metcalfe, and the southern 2/3 is within St. Clair region. And the cost to Adelaide Metcalfe for the Asable Bayfield's 1/3 portion is $25,000, just over $25,000, and for the St. Clair, for the southern 70 or 67%, it's $22,000. So the council was quite, I think, surprised by the comparison and based on the amount of area within each watershed.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, I'm from another municipality that is covered by two different conservation authorities, and only in our case, the other one is Lower Thames. And so when you look at the dollar amount we pay to Lower Thames, it's quite a bit more than what we pay to St. Clair from our municipality. But percentage-wise, St. Clair's percent is going up a lot more from 2020 to 2021 than what Lower Thames is. But if you look at the dollar figure, the St. Clair part is still a lot more if you figured it out per acre. Or St. Clair fee is a lot less for the size of the area. So yeah, I think part of the reason St. Clair is having to put their fees up so much percentage-wise is because they've done a good job in the past of keeping the fees down. And if you see a summary chart like we've been sent comparing the different conservation authorities and the fees charged to the municipalities, St. Clair is near the bottom. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, Larry, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This was impressed upon me when I arrived at the authority about 6 years ago. And when it's easy to be infatuated with percentages, I find myself doing that on occasion. But when you say a 5 or 6% increase in the levy, 5 or 6% of what? I think what was impressed upon me, and it's certainly an important, I know the two previous speakers here have alluded to it, but our percentage, the general levy the municipalities pay to the Conservation Authority represents about 12% of the St. Clair budget. which is the, if not, well, close to, if not the lowest percentage in any of the 36 conservation authorities in Ontario. So we're getting good value for our money, folks. And I know that it's easy to get caught in the percentages, but the percentage of the Conservation Authority budget that the municipalities pay to St. Clair is roughly 12%, if I'm not mistaken, which is a pretty good value for our money.
Thanks, Larry. Go ahead, Lori.
I think when you look at conservation authorities, they're similar but dissimilar. When we all look at who we are as a municipality and what area is being covered by one group and what area is being covered by another, they may not exactly be apples for apples. There may be a little bit of apple and orange type thing there, because St. Clair has always come in lower for Lambton Shores. But there is the Sauville River that runs through from Staffa down into our way, and it has a lot of varying degrees of how and where it runs through. So I think sometimes we're not apples to apples, and I think that St. Clair has always been known as being a lower percentage for many reasons, but I think that they're not always the same.
Go ahead, Brian.
And we do our very best to make sure that when we are doing those comparisons, we are not including the additional grapes or the watermelon on the plate. We're looking directly at comparables. I would not in any way want to misconstrue that. So in specifically looking at the programs and services, which I went over with Adelaide Metcalfe Council, we have very much the same programs and services specific to Adelaide Metcalfe. So that's why I wanted to make sure I conveyed that. But we do, when we're doing comparisons, make sure that we're understanding that there are different services that are provided in different areas.
Okay, is there any other comments? Go ahead, Frank Nepchek, or Kenneth, sorry.
Just echoing what a number of the others have said, where we're in a situation where we have two conservation authorities as well, and certainly the value for dollars with St. Clair is there. I just want to express the concern that, I know we don't want to talk in percentages, but we can't keep increasing at high percentages year over year. All of us in our municipalities are facing budget challenges, and I think those are going to grow in the years to come. Certainly, the senior levels of government, the money that's been spent on the pandemic is going to translate into fewer dollars being available in future years. It has to. And so I think we're really going to all have to work within what we have. And so that means all of us, every municipality, every conservation authority is going to have to turn every dollar over a number of times before it gets spent and spend it wisely. So.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Just a comment, Chatham-Kent is also has two conservation authorities, and if you compare Lower Thames to the St. Clair, we also are considerably lower in dollars compared to that. So with that.
Joe, Mike's had his hand up for a bit.
Okay, sorry, Mike. I'm sorry, I didn't see that. Sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that we're voting on 8.2, and as such, is that correct?
Yes, that's right.
And as such, I presume this is a recorded vote, given that it's a weighted vote?
It is, yes, it is.
So I find myself in the peculiar situation where the budget has been returned by the city of Sarnia to the St. Clair Conservation Authority for review, essentially saying they didn't support the budget. I, on the other hand, as did Councillor Burrow, supported or did not support the returning of the motion based upon the fact that we wear a different hat. And as such, I'm in a quandary here as to how we should be expressing the view of our council relative to this particular vote, if I could get some assistance.
Brian, do you want to handle that, please?
I think what certainly with the couple of individuals that have mentioned that there's an intent to take it to council, we do have an opportunity to put this decision off to our annual general meeting. We would have to, or we would look to certainly ensure that we pass it then, but we are not in a position where we could not do that. So if a deferral to our subsequent meeting would be better suited for everybody to come back with comments from council, that would be great. We do like to have it in place. I guess I'm fussy. I like to have the budget in place before I start spending any money, even if it's January 1st. So.
Okay, Terry, you're next.
Thank you. Yes, I'm quite willing to go ahead and support it today. The comments that were made at council to me didn't make sense. First of all, the fellow who made the motion in that was talking about a 12% increase. So I have no idea where they got their numbers from, because that just is not the case. So I'm not sure where that information came from. And secondly, the biggest debate had to do with Highland Glen. And as a council, as a board here, we've already said we're going to go ahead with that study at Highland Glen. So I don't see where there are any impediments to me in voting for it, because it makes sense to me that the overall budget is proper, and I think we should just do it, go ahead with it, and get it done.
Mike, did you have a comment?
No, I'm inclined to agree that when I get into this meeting, I wear a different hat. And even though I voted against the Highland Glen study, the fact is that this board approved it. And I have to accept the principle of the majority. So I will be supporting the budget as presented.
Okay, I don't see any other hands. Ashley, would you do a weighted vote then, please?
No, Joe.
Oh, sorry.
Chairman Joe,
Sorry, Brad, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Joe. I think we should consider deferring this only to give the time to the other municipalities. If they're sending something in, maybe we should wait to hear from them. So I would move that we defer this to our next meeting, in I think it's February or March.
Do I have a seconder for that? Dan McMillan? Okay, any discussions on the deferral? Okay, all those that are opposed to the motion? 1, 2, 3. Let me see here. Can I get a recorded vote on that, please, Ashley, because it's hard to count here.
Okay, for or against deferral, John Brennan,
Against.
Al Broad,
For.
Pat Brown,
Against.
Andy Brucewicks,
You're muted, Andy.
I know. Against.
Terry Burrell,
Against.
Larry Gordon,
Against.
Aaron Hall,
Against.
Frank Kennis,
Against.
Brad Loosely,
For.
Betty Ann McKinnon,
Against.
Kevin Marriott,
For.
Nettie McEwen,
Against.
Mark McGill,
For.
Dan McMillan,
For.
Steve Miller,
Against.
Frank Nemchek,
For.
Lori Scott,
For.
Mike Stark,
Against.
Jerry Westgate,
Against.
Joe Foss.
Against.
Awesome.
14 for, 7 against.
Sorry.
Motion's defeated. So now we'll have a weighted vote on the motion to approve the budget. Ashley, can you go ahead, please?
Certainly. For Adelaide Metcalf, Betty Ann McKinnon,
For.
For Brooke Alvinston, nope, that's not correct. Frank Nemchek, yes, that is correct, sorry.
Again.
For Chatham Kent, Joe Foss.
For.
For Chatham Kent, Aaron Hall.
For.
Don Euphemia, Al Broad.
Against.
For Inniskillen, Kevin Marriott.
Against.
For Lambton Shores, Lori Scott. Lori, you're on mute.
For.
Thank you.
Hi, Andy. Oh, I don't waste time, Randy. How
For
are you,
Middle-
Andy?
Just
For Middlesex
go to the
Center,
vote right now.
Dan McMillan.
A vote.
For.
For Newbury, Mark McGill.
Newbury and Southwest Middlesex. Well,
Yeah, I'll do Southwest Middlesex
Okay.
after.
for,
For Oil Springs, Kevin Marriott.
Against.
I'll do that for you.
For Petrolia, Brad Loosely.
All right. Andy.
Against.
Vote.
For Plimpton, Wyoming, Nettie McEwen. Nettie, you're on mute. Sorry, Nettie, I didn't get your vote.
Yeah. No, I didn't say it yet.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. This is for deferral or against deferral, correct?
No.
No,
But
this
we-
is the weighted motion.
Oh. For.
Thank you. For Point Edward, Larry Gordon.
For.
For Sarnia, Terry Burrell.
For.
For Sarnia, Mike Stark.
For.
For Sarnia, Andy Brunswicks.
For.
For Southwest Middlesex, Mark McGill.
for,
For St. Clair Township, Pat Brown.
For.
For St. Clair Township, Steve Miller.
For.
For Strathroy Caradoc, Frank Kenneth.
For.
For Strathroy Caradoc, John Brennan.
For.
For Warwick Township, Jerry Westgate.
For.
Thank you. I have that the vote has passed by 90.83%.
Great. Thank you very much, Ashley.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to 8.3, that the Board of Directors approves the 2021 budget for $9,739,780 with a municipal matching grant levy of $161,000, including finalized modified current value assessment values, update to specific projects, and municipal comments received to date. I have a mover and a seconder, please. Okay, Andy and Betty Ann, any questions on this motion? Anybody opposed? Sorry.
well, no, I had a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Why can I not see this on my agenda? Item 8.3. It's not there.
Okay. Brian, do you want to deal with that?
Do you mean as far as an additional report, Mark?
Oh, okay, this is an additional report, so it isn't included. It
No,
isn't somehow shown on the agenda that we received electronically.
No, there wasn't an attachment for this because you've already received the budget.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, the motion's carried. Okay, item 8.4, that the Board of Directors acknowledges the report dated December the 1st, 2020 regarding document retention and approves the destruction of identified documents as per the St. Clair Region Conservation Authority document retention policy. I have a mover and a seconder, Jerry Westgate, and seconded by Mike Stark. Is there any questions, comments on that? Motion carries. 8.5, that the Board of Directors acknowledges a report dated November the 19th, 2020 regarding the disposal of non-essential and surplus equipment and approves the disposal methods as outlined. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Kevin and Dan, questions? Seeing none, motion's carried. Go to 8.6, that the board acknowledges a report dated November the 18th, 2020 regarding environmental registration of Ontario posting ERO 019-2636, a proposal under the Endangered Species Act to enable use of species at risk conservation funds and to streamline authorizations for certain activities that impact species at risk while maintaining protections of species at risk, and further approves the proposed response to this posting and direct staff to submit this response to the identified provincial contract on behalf of the Board of Directors. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Lori, seconded by Terry. Can I have any questions, comments? Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I have Brian, just in a short form, just give me a quick explanation exactly what that means.
I'm gonna pass the buck here and ask Aaron to chime in for us.
Okay, thank you.
Through you, Mr. Chair, these notes are, there is a current proposal under the Endangered Species Act to create a conservation fund. So the idea is to streamline the process so that there are certain exemptions where a proponent can pay a certain amount of money to not have to create their own habitat enhancements under the Species at Risk or Endangered Species Act legislation. So our comments are to the effect that we're not sure if we really appreciate that they are taking an effort to streamline and coordinate on a large scale. So that will be beneficial in some ways. We're just kind of cautioning a precautionary approach. So in some cases, the offsetting ratios may need to be adjusted for the uniqueness of this area and its habitats. And I think that's in a nutshell. Does anyone have any questions?
Go ahead, Brad.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think I got most of that. Are we getting involved with creating, again, some additional work that we don't really need to be getting into? That's just my concern, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Brian, go ahead.
I really don't like the term that's being used with regards to this and some other policies that are out there right now, but this that certainly leans toward the pay for slay type policy that the government keeps pushing forward. So these comments basically would go into the environmental registry and be recorded, assuming that they either make changes or don't make changes moving forward based on our comments, etc. It might actually open up another funding opportunity for us, and we will certainly pay attention to this so that we'd be able to continue work with landowners or potentially even on our own properties. So although it's maybe we got to keep our ear to the ground, there's not a lot of additional work right now that we'd be doing with what we're responding to here.
Okay, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank Brian. Thank you for that. I'm okay.
Okay, is there any other questions, comments? Is anybody opposed to the motion? Seeing none, the motion's passed. Okay, that the board of directors move into camera to discuss conservation awards and personal information with the general manager, manager of communications, director of finance and administration, finance and administrative assistant, board coordinator remain for the in camera. Brian, go ahead.
Just wonder if we can add our manager of GIS and IT so that we to the motion, so that we stay together here, just in case we have any further problems.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. So anyway, can I have a mover and a seconder then? Pat and Kevin.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
It's Larry. On page 123, 124, before we move on, if I might, I'm seeking clarification. It seems to have flown under the radar. It's dated November 25th, the correspondence from Ottawa, on behalf of the Minister of Fisheries and Oceans and Canadian Coast Guard. A fairly substantial amount of money's involved coming our way. Could I, through you, Mr. Chair, to Brian, get clarification on that?
Yep, go ahead, Brian.
Certainly, it is another opportunity out there that we're going to be diving into. We've already looked at how we might be able to fit into the additional funding that's been announced. I certainly think that the approval that's been put forward, and Aaron, I'm going to have to ask you to chime back in and quote the number for us, because I honestly can't remember specifically what was approved.
1,227,000.
Aaron? Did I lose Aaron?
She's still in the meeting,
I'm
but
sorry about
muted.
that. I'm sorry. What number are you asking for?
So what was approved under the last federal funding announcement?
For the Wetland Conservation Fund?
Actually, it's the Protect Aquatic Species in the watershed. Federal money, the correspondence dated November 25th.
I think it's the CNF money, the Canadian Nature Fund money.
Oh, I'm not sure. I'll have to look on that for you.
Yeah, it's in the letter there. It's 1.27 million, I believe, isn't it?
Yeah, I think that's the overall, though. That's not not what's coming directly to us.
Well, if I can find it here again, the St. Clair Conservation Authority will receive up to 1.227. Yeah.
Yes,
okay.
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay. I guess it's the 301 moved permanently report, I guess. So that's pretty good news, I think.
My apologies for the heading on that. I think Don has pulled that from our website that we use for collecting media information. So the 301 moved permanently is kind of irrelevant, but
okay.
Yes, so those dollars coming forward. Aaron maybe can get back to us even after we come back out of in camera, if you want, Mr. Chair, and give us a few more details about that funding.
Okay. We do have a mover and seconder to go into camera or into a closed session at 11:19. All in favor? Or opposed, I guess. Any opposed? Motion's carried. Okay.
Mr. Chair, if I could just have a moment to make sure I remove the members who are not supposed to be in the meeting, and I'll let you know as soon as everybody's out.
Okay, that sounds good. Thank you.
Chairman Joe, just a question.
Yep. Go ahead.
I know that we're recording this this meeting. Is that going to be paused right now, considering we're going into closed session, or what's the protocol on that?
I believe so, but maybe Brian or Ashley can clarify?
Yes, indeed. We will be pausing the recording. And that'll be one of the other things Chris does after he removes the unnecessary characters from the meeting.
Okay.
Brian, thank you.
Okay, almost there. It would help if they left voluntarily.
Yeah.
It's kind of fun for me, though.
What a different world when you have to kick people out of a virtual meeting.
All right, I believe everyone has left that needs to leave.
Okay.
I will pause the recording now.
Super. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, Brian, can you put up those motions then again so that I can read them off for the closed session, from closed business?
Sorry, Joe, if we can just, if we can go back and
Business. Anyone have anything they'd like to bring before the authority? Go ahead, Pat.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I did contact the Tim Dobie Consulting and had my interview with them the other day, and I know there's only a couple of days left now this week that they were hoping to get all their interviews with the board members completed.
Okay. Any other comments? Brad, go ahead.
Just, Mr. Chair, I just want to thank you and wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you. I was going to do that as well. Wish everyone a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, and hope everybody has a good time celebrating with your families. Any other comments, new business? Seeing none, can I have a motion that we adjourn to the next meeting? Lori and Frank Kennis, any opposed? Motion's carried. Thank you very much.
Merry Christmas, all.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank
Merry
you.
Christmas,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas, everybody.
Stay safe,
Merry
everyone.
Christmas.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.